I'm Olivia.
And I'm Amy. And this is Girls
Girls
Gone
Gone
Spooky,
Spooky.
episode
Episode
3.
3. We made it. As
Yeah.
if this is the destination. We made it.
And this is actually
uh,
appropriate given what I'm going to be talking about today. But it's number
oh,
3.
yes. Oh my God, that's right.
I
Wow.
hadn't
Look
thought
at
of
us
that.
go.
Yes.
Okay, so last week, before we get into like the meat and potatoes of this week's content, I wanted to ask if you had anything to add on the tunnels.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how I didn't mention them. I guess maybe because nothing happened to me down there. Excuse me. But I can just paint a picture of what they look like because these are tunnels underneath the building that I talked about last time where I had spooky experiences. And the tunnels are for, I believe, people to get from building to building in the hospital in the wintertime, which is common in cold weather places. But these tunnels are like straight out of a horror movie. It's a concrete floor with weird mystery stains of like dripping things on the walls and exposed pipes and like curves where you can't see what's around the corner. And yeah, I would have to walk through those tunnels to get to this creepy building because it was either do I go through the tunnels or do I walk above ground in this neighborhood that's not necessarily the best? So being scared for different reasons.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I guess I would take paranormal over real people. Well, you know what? I'm just not gonna decide. It's all scary. So nothing is invited in.
No. Yeah.
I don't have any preference, really.
Right. Or just none of the above would be good.
Yeah. Just hard pass on all of the above. For anyone listening, obviously we can't show you, but Amy did send me a video of the tunnels and can confirm absolutely bone chilling. Really not a fan of that area.
No.
So inspired by last week's episode, before we get into our agreed upon topics, I had to just add a little extra something because so I went into my office for the first time this week on Monday and Tuesday. So it's located for anyone in Toronto or familiar with the Toronto area. It's on University near Queen's Park. And so when I was kind of getting settled in my desk, one of my coworkers was also in, one of my teammates, and he was kind of pointing out, because we're up on the, I think, 12th floor, which isn't that high up, but you can still see quite a bit because there aren't a ton of high rises in that area. It's more like mid rises. And he was pointing out just buildings in the view. And one is Whitney Block, which apparently is very haunted. And everybody knows that it's like the haunted, like ghost building. And so I just wanted to do a little bit of research on it. And it's funny because it's one of those, I feel like it might be one of those locations that's kind of like folklore-esque because it's really hard to find any like specific instances of hauntings of people being like, I had this happen to me. But it's more like rumored things. So just really quickly, a little bit on the history of the building. So it was built in 1926 to house Ontario government offices. And the tower that rises above the block was added in 1932. So it's like Gothic Art Deco architectural style. And it also included a bowling alley as well as pens for live domestic and farm animals, which were kept on the 6th floor. and they would bring the animals up using a hand-cranked elevator.
Oh my God.
I was just like, who designed this?
Yeah.
And then they talk about who designed it, which is actually the creepy part. But before we get to that, so the tower, so the bottom floors, like the block, are still occupied with Ontario government offices. But the tower was abandoned in the 60s due to fire, health, safety code violations. So there's only one stairwell. So in case of a fire, it's like everyone wouldn't be able to get out. Again, hand cranked elevators. Like, okay, sus. And there was no proper ventilation system installed when it was constructed. So anyway, it was just a big hazard, basically. And so the architect, his name was Francis Heeks, died before it officially opened. And it's his ghost that is said to haunt the premises. So legend also has it that there's a female spirit that inhabits the tunnel, which I assume goes under the building, or at least a handful of government workers report feeling a presence of hers over the years. Another tunnel leading from the building to Queen's Park subway station has also been abandoned. So there's some lack of clarity around how Heeks died, which is like part of what makes it a little bit spooky. The public records that are available state he passed in Kingston and was buried in Mount Pleasant Cemetery. And he was 74. So it's like, you know, it's not unreasonable that he would have died of natural causes. But he was the chief architect of the province's public works department. His other commissions include Government House, which was torn down in 61, and this author from the article wrote Cue Twilight Zone theme music, which I thought was clever. The Lakeshore Psychiatric Hospital, aka the Mimico Asylum, which opened in 1889. That building has its own horror stories.
I can imagine.
But yeah. So it was just interesting because it's like, you know, apparently there's some hauntings from the government officials who work in the building. But it was just funny because it was like we had just recorded the last episode. I went into the offices and was like, oh, that building's haunted. I was like, ooh.
Tell me everything.
Yeah, tell me everything you know. Yeah, and I guess I think back in May, they did some sort of like some event. I think it was called Open Toronto or something like that, which was it sounded from what I read like a walking tour of Toronto, and it included a lot of like haunted destinations, including Whitney Block. So I was like, damn, I missed it. Because I just moved here in June. So anyway, just a little bit on Toronto's history, and a lot of that content was pulled from a Now Toronto article called Hidden Toronto, the Abandoned Whitney Block Tower by Enzo Di Matteo. So thanks so much, Enzo, for your insight.
Thanks, Enzo. I'm sure there's a lot of ghosty history there.
I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, especially, and we talked about this at length in the last episodes, but I think also just with all of the Indigenous peoples who were settled here. I mean, that can't be good. You know, like that's
so tragic.
Yeah, and today is actually a relatively new bank holiday in Canada. It used to be called Orange Shirt Day, but it's now known as the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. So it was established in 2013 originally to raise awareness about the damaging effects that the residential school system had on Indigenous communities. And essentially it's promoting Indigenous businesses and telling people to buy from Indigenous businesses and, you know, commemorate, I think, to the loss of life that has and continues to happen, especially with all of the children whose bodies have been discovered from these awful, I mean, they were like internment camps, essentially. It was like extermination camps. So
sad.
Very, very sad. Yeah, so definitely in no way want to make entertainment out of that, but just a side note. So
yeah, are you ready?
Should we get into it? Are you ready?
I
Is the
think I'm
question.
ready. I think you're gonna scare me, but yeah, I'm ready.
I think I'm going to scare you too a little bit, but okay. So we kind of split topics for this week. I am going to be talking about shadow people and more specifically the Hat Man.
Oh
Ooh,
god.
it just gives me chills.
I know, just hearing the name
I
makes
know.
me nervous.
Yikes. And then do you want to introduce what you're going to be covering?
Sure. So I think I mentioned it in the first episode, but there was a period where I woke up almost every night between I think 3:30 and 3:45 in the morning. So that's what's known as the witching hour. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and then also a little bit of numerology that relates.
Yay. So we're going to end on that more positive
Lighter
note.
note. Yes.
Yeah, but we're gonna start with the creepy shit.
Mhm.
So as I mentioned before, I have struggled with night terrors since I was probably in middle school, so early preteens. Um, and I personally, just to caveat, have never seen the Hat Man, and if it is listening, I do not want to. So please, you are not welcome in my mind or my home, nor is
Just
any other
say
entity
no,
like
thank you.
that. No, thank you. Yeah. No, thank you
Take
is
a
really
lesson from me.
just, yeah. No, thank you is absolutely going to be my go to for
Mhm.
any future experiences I have. Okay. So I started just digging into like shadow people in general, but a lot of like all paths lead back to Hatman. And it's really, really fascinating when you start reading about it. So basically, I'm pulling a lot of this content from a few different articles, but one is it's actually a project. It's called the Hat Man Project by a man named Timothy M. Brown Jr., who's actually writing a book about it. And so he had an experience with the Hat Man in his teens, and just like it completely terrified him. And he, had a few other experiences, talked to family about it, and then through, I guess, a pretty well-known radio show that featured it. People began talking about it more openly. And so he started collecting people's stories. So if you're interested in learning more or reading more stories, the Hat Man Project, Timothy Brown Jr., Google it, it'll come up immediately. And he's releasing a book soon called The Hat Man, His Identity Revealed. So he keeps some stuff close to the chest. So I actually really want to read the book now.
That's
But
intriguing.
we'll start from the beginning. So the idea of the Hat Man is he's this like dark, like described as like blacker than black, like it's like darker than a shadow figure that appears to people typically at night. And he has you can see that he's in the outline of his shadow, that he's wearing a broad brimmed hat and a trench coat. And so he's considered to be by most people a shadow person, which is vaguely the same description minus the specifics of the hat and the cloak. You can't usually see details of their face or details of their clothing beyond the general shape. But occasionally they'll have red eyes. So you'll just see like red glowing eyes on a black, super, super
Nice.
dark figure. Yeah, nice and creepy. Perfect for nighttime. So generally though, so shadow people are, it's people report them as different things. So some people see them as like passing movement, like in your peripheral vision or things along those lines, which really freaks me out because I get that all the time, and it's always it's black in color. And I've seen people that like I saw them and then they weren't there suddenly. And I was like, what the heck was that? So I don't love that. But there are variations of the shadow people. The Hat Man is maybe one of them. And there are some other theories as well. So what's interesting too is that this is a global phenomenon. So I was reading an article by Quartz that was called "What is Sleep Paralysis?" And because so many people associate him with sleep paralysis, because it makes sense. Like I found like an actual scientific description of it, and I wasn't wrong. I'm actually surprised, but what I thought was what I thought sleep paralysis was is actually correct. So during rapid eye movement, or REM, muscles relax to the point where they become immobilized, probably to keep us from violently acting out our dreams while we sleep. This is also the stage of the most intense dreams. People who experience sleep paralysis have essentially woken up before they've stopped dreaming. Many who experience sleep paralysis also experience hypnagogic hallucinations, or vivid images perceived in the transition from wakefulness to sleep, or the other way around. However, sleep science can't yet explain why the brain serves up the specific images it does in dreams, nor why multiple people across cultures might experience the same dream or nightmare. So that's the big like question mark around all of it. It's like sleep paralysis is real. Like we know scientifically that's a thing that people have, but this is reported everywhere. It's reported everywhere. Like there's been global research done. So a lot of reports in Southeast Asia, in Greece, in Inuit tribes, Japan, Newfoundland, like everywhere that people are reporting these stories, which then brought me to Timothy Brown's content, because he is like really trying to understand the why. And a recurring theme throughout is that there seems to be an increasing cadence with which he is appearing to people. Now, Timothy, the piece that he keeps close to the chest is he believes he has a strong hypothesis as to why that is revealed in his book. So he doesn't reveal it online.
Wow. I can't wait to read that now.
I know. I don't even know if the book's available yet. I don't think it is. I need to check. But yeah, so I'm very curious to hear what he thinks. But there are some other hypotheses as well. But just for anyone who's never experienced sleep paralysis or isn't familiar with it, what usually happens is you're, in between sleep and wakefulness, and you are basically frozen. You can't move your body. Usually you can move maybe your eyes. It's like the feeling of when you wake up and you realize you've fallen asleep on your arm and you have pins and needles. It's like fully numb. And then as it's coming back, you have that pins and needles sensation. It's like that. So you're numb and then slowly you get feeling back. So like you'll be able to wiggle your toes or wiggle your fingers a little bit. For the Hat Man specifically, the common thread is basically the shape of the figure will vary, but the way he makes you feel is the same in all of these stories. So they all have a hat. Not all seem to have the trench coat. Not all have the glowing eyes. So it's a little different for people. But he makes his victims feel utterly paralyzed with terror and breathless, as if you're just like frozen with fear, basically. So not a good feeling, especially at like 3 a.m. or whenever this is that you're waking up. So I want to tell Timothy's story because I think it's really interesting. And then I have some of the hypotheses as to what the Hat Man could possibly be.
Okay.
Excuse me. So Timothy's story. So he was 14, living with his grandmother and his great-grandmother in Nashville, Tennessee. He said, "What I saw gripped me immediately with fear and dread." This was as he was falling asleep in his grandmother and great-grandmother's home. "I saw a tall, human-like figure, and the figure looked like that of a man. He had no distinguishable features whatsoever. I could see no eyes, no nose or mouth, only blackness. He looked like a shadow, only darker. He had a very wide-brimmed hat and a long trench coat that flowed as he moved. I started to tremble. My heart began to race. At that moment, I came to the conviction that there was indeed an intruder in my house," which is always what I've thought when I have anything weird happen out of the ordinary. I'm like, there's somebody in the house. So I was like, oh, that's kind of validating that
you're not the only one.
People aren't like, oh, it's a ghost. I'm like, holy shit, I'm getting robbed. So he said, as I watched him move in the back of my mind, I began to play out scenarios as to what he and I were going to do. Was I going to yell? Was I going to get up and run after him, try to fight him? Mind you, he's 14. So super scary at a very like fragile age, I would say. So he kept looking into the hallway. He stood there at the threshold between my great-grandmother's room and my grandmother's room. He leaned his head and body into my great-grandmother's room and looked in, and then turning his head towards her, and then turning his head towards me. He said he had his eyes closed as much as he could so he could still see him, but would look like he was still sleeping. So he said he stood there for what seemed like an eternity, just staring, and then moved very slowly and without sound back into the hallway just out of view. As I kept watching, I then saw this blacker than black figure move toward my grandmother's room, just like before. So he was looking into the great-grandmother's room and at him, and then he moved to the grandmother's room, does the same thing, leans his head in to look at her, then looks back at him. And then he said he leaned back again and moved out of view into the hallway. So at this point, he's like, okay, there's someone in the house, like, casing the place. Mm-hmm. So, like, he's like, I summoned all of my courage. I jumped out of bed yelling and charged into the hallway ready for a fight. I turned the corner into the hallway and he was gone. And so directly after the experience and during the next day, he spent a lot of time talking with his family. So he immediately woke up his grandmother, and his great-grandmother was like, there's somebody in the house. Yeah. They like looked through the whole house. There's nobody there. And so creepy. So he's talking to his family about what had happened and was surprised to learn that his experience with this man or figure was not the only one that had happened in the house. As it turned out, his grandmother and great-grandmother had also seen the same thing. And his grandmother relayed to him that a few nights prior, she had woken up in the middle of the night and also saw a dark figure walk past her doorway in the dim light of the hallway. Since it looked like, she said it looked like it was wearing some kind of flowing robe, so she thought it was her mother, so the great-grandmother, getting up to go to the bathroom wearing her robe. Then his great-grandmother told him that she also on a separate occasion had seen the same dark, shadowy figure lurking in the house at night. So he didn't know what to think of it. He said it was very against the idea of this being like some otherworldly presence. And so just kind of brushed it off. It was a figure of imagination, like the power of suggestion made the grandmother and great-grandmother say those things or think they saw those things too. So he thought about it now and then, didn't think too much about it after that. So he was listening to a radio show. So fast forward to 2001. So I would assume maybe a few years to a decade later. And he's listening to this, I think, relatively popular radio show called Coast to Coast AM with a man named George Norrie. I'd never heard of it, but they were specifically discussing shadow people, and the Hat Man description kept coming up. So a quick little background on this radio show. It actually helped popularize modern beliefs on shadow people. So Wikipedia actually references this radio show as being one of the things that like really made conversation about this public and more common. Yeah. So the first time the topic of shadow people was discussed at length on the show was April 12, 2001, which aligns with Timothy's recollection, when host Art Bell interviewed Native American elder Thunder Strikes, who is also known as Harley Swift Deer Reagan. During the show, listeners were encouraged to submit drawings of shadow people that they had seen, and a large number of these drawings were immediately shared publicly on the website. In October that year, Heidi Hollis published her first book on the topic of shadow people and later became a regular guest on Coast to Coast. Hollis describes shadow people as dark silhouettes with human shapes and profiles that flicker in and out of peripheral vision, and claims that people have reported the figures attempting to jump on their chest and choke them, in quotes. She believes the figures to be negative, alien beings that can be repelled by various means, including invoking the name of Jesus. Although participants in online discussion forums devoted to paranormal and supernatural topics describe them as menacing, other believers and paranormal authors do not agree whether shadow people are either evil, helpful, or neutral. And some speculate that shadow people may also be extra-dimensional inhabitants of another universe. So we'll get to that more in a minute. But lots of theories about what is this phenomenon. So back to Timothy. So he's listening to this radio show and he's like, what the F? Like, in what world is it possible that this thing that happened to me when I was a kid that I refused to believe was real or otherworldly or whatever. Now all these people all over the country are suddenly talking about it, describing it exactly as I saw it. Like, how is that possible? So he's basically collected stories since then. So he started the Hat Man Project. There are a ton of stories on his sites. I read a few of them, and some of them are terrifying. So if you're looking to be scared, go for it. But he, like I mentioned before, believes that there's actually a reason, and he says a very good reason with emphasis, for the increase in visitations by the Hat Man. So that increasing regularity, though, is a common theme. That's not just Timothy speculating that. Now, I think there are likely more logical explanations for that. The invention of the World Wide Web and, you know, the rising popularity of, you know, open source forums like Reddit, for example, where everyone's sharing these stories. So it's, you know, is it that it's actually increasing in cadence, or is it just that we hear more about it because we have access to it? Hard to say. But this kind of goes more into, so this is a slightly different source. So it's called The Explanation for the Shadow People Phenomenon, and talks just a little bit more about the category of paranormal things more generally. So those experiencing and studying the shadow people phenomenon say that these entities almost always used to be seen out of the corner of the eye and very briefly. But more and more people are beginning to see them straight on and for longer periods of time. Some experiencers testify that they have even seen eyes, usually red, on these shadow beings. Mysterious sightings have become a hot topic of conversation in paranormal chat rooms, message boards, and websites, and it has given widespread attention on paranormal talk radio, like Coast to Coast. So several theories have been offered as to what shadow people are and where they come from. So I'm very curious to hear your take, Amy, and what you think.
Okay.
The first is a figment of the imagination. So we know that sleep paralysis is real and that people have night terrors. That happens. This is usually the explanation we get from skeptics and also science, mainstream science, who are usually people who have never experienced the shadow people phenomenon, which, you know, makes sense. You know, it's basically just saying that it's nothing more than the active human imagination, that it's our minds playing tricks on us. Our eyes are seeing things in a fraction of a second that isn't really there. It's all an illusion. So especially when we're talking about things quickly passing through your peripheral vision, I mean, I always chalk it up to like my eyesight's not great. And maybe there's like, I've got like cataracts or something. I hopefully don't have cataracts because I'm 27, but you never know. Honestly, better than shadow people. I would take cataracts.
Maybe.
Okay, so that's number one, figment of your imagination. 2, ghosts. To call these entities ghosts demands first a definition of what exactly we mean by ghosts, but by almost any definition, shadow people seem to be different than ghost phenomena. So in general, although shadow people often do have a human outline or shape, you can't see any details of their appearance. That's very lacking. Whereas most people who report ghost sightings, they describe the ghost facial features, their clothing, and literally any other detail besides their outline.
Darkness.
Darkness. The one detail most often noted is the glowing red eyes, but that's it. There's nothing beyond that. No nose, no mouth, nothing else. So that's 2, ghosts. 3 is demons or other spirit entities. So the dark countenance and malevolent feelings that are often reported in association with these creatures have led some researchers to speculate that they may be demonic in nature. If they are demons, we have to wonder what their purpose or intent is in letting themselves be seen in this manner. Is it merely just to frighten us, or, you know, what's the end game? Number 4 is astral bodies. One theory suggests that shadow people are the shadows or essences of people who have out-of-body experiences. According to Jeffrey Gross, an author, lecturer, and teacher of astral travel, we all travel out of the body when we are asleep. Perhaps this theory says we are seeing the ephemeral astral bodies of these twilight travelers. Which I was like... like mind blown. I was like, wow, I've never thought about that.
No.
So astral bodies, number 4.
Wow.
Number 5, equally cool, interdimensional beings. Even mainstream science is fairly convinced that there are dimensions other than the 3 in which we live. And if these other dimensions exist, who or what, if anything, inhabits them? Some theorists say that these dimensions exist parallel and very close to our own, although invisible to us. And if there are inhabitants in these other dimensions, is it possible that they have found a way to intrude on our dimension and become at least partially visible? If so, they could very well appear as shadows. It has long been held by psychics and other sensitives that beings on other planes of existence are of different quote unquote vibrations. Science is beginning to look at reality on a quantum level in the same way, that particles of the smallest size exist as vibrations. Perhaps some theorize the vibrations of our existence are beginning to mesh with those of another dimension, which accounts for the increase in such phenomena as ghosts, shadow people, and possibly aliens.
Oh, E.T.
Phone home. Which brings us to the next one, which is aliens. So the alien and abduction phenomena are so bizarre that it's no surprise that extraterrestrials are suspects as the shadow people. Abductees have reported in many cases that the alien greys seem to be able to pass through walls and closed windows and to appear and disappear abruptly, among other otherworldly talents. Perhaps, too, they can go about their alien agenda disguised in the shadows. One thing they know is there's a lot of overlap among all of those ideas, right? So aliens and ghosts could all be interdimensional beings, or they're all aliens, or they're all ghosts and they're all interdimensional, or whatever. Or aliens could be time travelers. Like we don't know. There's so much overlap, and a lot of people believe that demons are actually responsible for all of the above. So alien abductions, any of those phenomena that are reported that are paranormal or otherworldly by nature, that it's demons. And then the very last option is simply a mystery, which I found to be exceedingly unsatisfying.
But maybe the most likely one.
Yeah, exactly.
We might never know.
We may never know. Yeah. So I'm very curious to hear out of, general reactions, but also of all of those theories offered up, what you think is most likely.
Well, the thing that I get hung up on is that everyone has the same experience. I mean, at least with the Hat Man, that feeling of terror and breathlessness. That makes me think it's a demon because
me too.
Like I would like to think that aliens aren't going to be haunting us, hopefully,
right.
or instilling fear in us. I just think my initial thought is it's got to be a demon.
Yeah. But I think too, the other thing I was thinking about this in great detail. But the other thing I was thinking is, what if it's not the shadow person that gives you that feeling? What if it's the mesh thinning between dimensions, and that we inherently feel something's wrong with that? Like that, but I'm not a physicist. Like, I don't know what that even means. Like,
I know. I was thinking that when you said that.
What dimension are we in? Like, what's happening?
That's what I thought when you said that.
But it's like they talk about it as if it's like a veil, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is how we think about ghosts usually, or spirits. So what if it's that we sense something, like something's out of place, but so out of place that it's out of dimension. And that literally gives you that like, like something's not right. Like I feel like the world is like, the fabric of the world is like ripping apart, basically. Yeah. Like that would be terror inducing, right?
Yeah, it would be. But the other thing, like, was his name Tim? Who was the author? Okay.
Yeah.
With him and his grandmothers both having the same experience, it's as if it's showing up in a place where I would think like a astral body or something could kind of go anywhere, but it seems like maybe their house
that's true.
was housing something.
Yeah. Because that feels more like spirit entity to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then how is it getting from
all around the world,
Japan to Nashville? You know, it's like, what?
Yeah.
That's freaking wild, man.
Yeah. Maybe we have to embrace the last option that we're never going to know.
No. I sometimes lay awake thinking about this, like the fact that scientists and specifically like physicists are actually starting to think about how we can explore other dimensions makes me want to vomit. Like
from fear or what?
Yeah, or just anticipation. I don't know. Like, just, yeah, probably fear of the unknown. Like, it's like maybe we shouldn't. Is anyone in the room like, yo, I don't know about that? Like, let's not.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I kind of feel the same way, and I often feel like I don't want to know these things, and am I just not a deep thinker? Or like I'm not as
that's definitely not it.
Beyond, I don't know, but some people want to know the answers to everything, and I don't have that inclination. I'm just willing to accept it the way it is. So
yeah, I am most of the time, but there are some things I want to know.
Yeah,
but then I may regret knowing. You
like
know,
right.
And I think I want to know because I know I can't. It's easy to say, oh yeah, I want to know, but I mean, there's not an opportunity for me to know. So, you know, it's like, okay, well, if it were actually presented to me, someone was like, I have the answer. Do you want it?
Yeah.
I don't know that I would be like, yeah, for sure. Lay it on me. It's like, yeah, the world's going to end tomorrow. I'd be like, bet, wish you didn't tell me.
Yeah.
I would be blood red mad. Yeah, gotta be selective about that. So anyway, whole thing gives me the wig. No, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
And to that, you get a no, thank you.
Yes,
but that should be our new tagline. No, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's perfect.
I love it.
Even though we don't want to know, I do want to read his book and see what his compelling evidence is.
Yeah, let me pull up his site again and see if when that bad boy's coming out.
Yes. Well,
let's see. I'm ready.
Okay. I was just thinking how to go about this in a organized manner since there was so much that I thought of as I was doing all this research, but I hope I consolidated enough. But
I'm sure you will have. I'm ready. Lay it on me.
So, okay. The witching hour is where we will start, and there is some disagreement about when it actually is, like what hour of the day is the witching hour. But the most widely accepted one is that it's between 3 and 4 in the morning. And I want to get the scientific explanations for this out of the way first, because who cares about those? But
just a quick nod to science and then back to the spook.
Exactly. And it kind of relates to the sleep paralysis that you were talking about, because at between 3 and 4 a.m., it's usually we're in REM sleep at that time of the night. So they try to explain it by saying that if you're woken up during that hour from your REM sleep, of course you're going to be jarred and feel uneasy. So they just try to explain it by saying that. And then also, boo. I know, that's what I say. I say boo. But yeah.
No, thank you, science.
No, thank you. That's not what this is about. But They also mention how do they account for time zones? Like, is the devil or
What?
whatever is working at the witching hour going through each time zone in the world so that everyone has the same witching hour from 3 to 4 in the morning? They're just trying to cast doubt about it in that way.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
Yeah.
Why would the devil not work with the time zones? Like,
Right. Because if he can,
he's not going to come at noon. Like, he's not coming for tea. He's trying to scare the shit out of you.
exactly. And if that's the time that he can be active, why wouldn't he move all
Right.
around the world? But anyway,
Interesting.
now the real things.
Yeah.
Ignore
Down
science.
to business.
Yeah.
What is selection bias? Who is she?
Yeah, we don't know. But these stories don't have much evidence to back them either, because they're pretty old. The majority of them actually have to do with Catholicism, Christianity, so religion. The first one is that there's a verse in the Bible. It's Mark 15:34 or something like that, that says that Jesus died on the cross at 3 p.m. And so the thought is that 3 a.m., since it's the inverse of 3 p.m.,
Yeah.
it's the time for the devil to come out, with 3 a.m. being the unholy hour and 3 p.m. being the holiest hour of the day. So,
wow. Firstly, I reject that 3 p.m. is the holiest hour of the day, because that is the time of day that I literally can't function.
Yeah.
I'm so unmotivated. I just want a snack.
Yep.
So, Jesus, take the wheel and make me a grilled cheese.
Exactly. I know. I would disagree with that too. It's the hardest time to get through.
Yeah. Maybe that's the point. I mean, he suffered, so we suffer. I don't know.
Yeah.
Prayer hands up, you know?
That's a good connection. Let's say that.
Yeah. You like that? I'm a scientist.
Yep. Clearly, we both are. I claimed to be one last week, so I'll stick with that.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, but the other one is that it's the devil making a mockery of the Holy Trinity. So, another religious association. And then the other one that seems most compelling, at least for why it's actually called the witching hour, is that in 1535, the Catholic Church banned any activity between 3 and 4 a.m. to prevent witchcraft. So they were, I guess, assuming that if there were witches, which I guess it was a panic then at that time, that they would be active in the middle of the night when people were sleeping.
Yeah.
So to prevent that, they banned activity, and now it's called the witching hour.
I actually I think there's logic to all of those. I'm just picturing like Satan on his throne, like, what a coincidence. That the Trinity is a 3 and that Jesus died at 3 and that these witchy bitches are 3. Like,
yeah.
Damn, am I a lucky son bitch or what?
I planned this perfectly.
Yeah. He's like, yes, it's all going according to plan. I like how I'm imagining Satan as like a Looney Tunes character.
I always picture him as like the goat man now from
Sabrina. Oh God. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
good.
a creepy version. I was thinking a little like he's just like a little red
devil.
Latex suit little guy.
I prefer that one.
Yeah, me too. We can think about that image. Burn that into your retina.
Yes. Okay, and the final one is they say that the veil, which we were just talking about, between the physical world and the spiritual world is thinnest at 3 a.m., which makes it the best time for spirits to try to communicate with people who are in the physical world. So apparently that's the time when mediums will have their most impactful or frequent experiences. But again, I'm sure if I looked at blog posts or something, I would be able to find stories of people that have all these things happen at between 3 and 4 in the morning. But in general, I think the witching hour is just, I don't know, a phenomenon that we've all agreed upon, maybe.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. So.
Yeah. I mean, the REM sleep thing does make sense to a degree, but then what's waking you?
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's the part I don't like. Because I mean, when I wake up in the middle of the night, it's because I have to pee.
Mm-hmm.
If I wake up for another reason, I'm freaked out because there's either been a loud noise that's waking me, which like there shouldn't be at 3 a.m.
Or you can't wake for anything.
No, for context, I sleep like the dead. So if you're waking me like Nosferatu, just like what's happening? If you wake me, not my bladder waking me, saying like, bitch, you gotta pee, then we gonna have a problem.
Yes. Right.
I don't like that. Mm-mm.
I know.
Well, and witches, the whole thing with witches too is like, so if it's Jesus died at 3, the holy, like mockery of the Holy Trinity. So it's all unholy. It's like the unholiest time, basically. Yeah. Witches were said to have made a pact with the devil, right? So of course they would pick that time to practice witchcraft. I mean, dark magic.
Yeah, I know.
We'll have to do a whole episode on witches and like white versus dark magic.
Love that.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. And another one that I didn't write down, but I remember as being interesting is folklore. It's called La Mala Hora, so it's Spanish for the bad or the evil hour. And I think that originated in Mexico, but then made its way up to the US, and it's part of, I think it said specifically New Mexican folklore, that La Mala Hora is actually a person, even though her name is the evil hour. But that's when she comes out, is at the evil hour. And some of the accounts I saw said that she would lure people to kill them, but others just said that she was there, and if you saw her, it was a reminder that you or someone you love was going to die soon. So, yeah, just
interesting.
Many different phenomena going on, all in that same time frame. So.
That's very interesting. There's I listen to so many like paranormal pods and stories and stuff. There are several characters or personas within the lore, and particularly Mexican lore, around a woman who, like, La Llorona is one. And then there's another one that's like comes as an owl. Lechuza? La Lechuza, I think it's called.
Just thinking
but
of
they're there's one, I can't remember which one, but I think with all of them there's some association with like, if you see it, it's because something bad's gonna happen. So like it's a bad omen, essentially. Which then makes me think of like Angel of Death. Like is, I don't know, it's also fascinating.
It is. And yeah, it's just accepting that we may never know.
I know. Have you ever done any witch shit at 3 a.m.?
No. I've only woken up at that time and been scared about why I'm waking up. So,
You're like, I don't think I'm going to be scrying tonight.
Yeah,
So
no.
I'm a little too scared for
Save
that.
that for later.
Yeah.
But
Save that for bright daylight.
yeah, at 3 p.m., the holiest hour.
I'm sure Jesus would love that.
Yeah.
Practicing witchcraft at the holiest hour.
Yeah, let's not tempt that either.
Yeah. Yeah, probably not the best.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so on a more upbeat note,
Yay.
so I was thinking about with the number 3, it has a very significant meaning in numerology, which is the study of numbers. And they say the number 3 reflects a lot of things in our physical world, like the cycle of life, birth, life, death, things like that. And if you see the number 3 often, which, by the way, seeing numbers often, they say in numerology, is your angels trying to send you a message. So, particularly when you see a series of numbers over and over again in your life, it's called an angel number because they're trying to send you a message through that number. But the number 3, I was trying to find some connection to the witching hour, but what it means in numerology is that the angels are offering you love and support, which is much nicer than waking up to
demons.
a demon.
Yeah.
So I want to accept that one instead. But then I think most people will know that the number 666 is the devil's number. And I didn't realize that came from the Bible, actually, from the book of Revelation. And I don't really understand why, but 666 is the number of the beast, they say. And in my life recently, I've been seeing the number 66 everywhere. So I was thinking, okay, great, Satan's number. Like, why am I seeing Satan's number out of all the options? But I looked up what that meant, and they say it means that you should strike a balance between the physical and spiritual realm, which seems very appropriate for
It does.
this podcast and for my life in general.
Yes.
Because I think you talked about it last time, about how a lot of people hesitate to tell stories like this or share what they think about this whole realm of things.
Yeah.
And even though I'm excited to share this on the podcast, and with you and with people that I love, I would never talk about this part of me with anyone else because it's met with such, I don't know, strange reactions or you're weird. So I don't know if I'm taking that message as a message to lean into that part of myself.
Yeah.
Because
I love that.
Yeah. I think
it's funny because I think thinking of Two Girls, One Ghost, for example, Corinne and Sabrina, the whole premise is we know this is weird. We bond over this shit because a lot of other people think it's fucking weird, but we don't really care. It's whatever. We believe in it and we find it to be fascinating and all of that. And that's why I love their podcast so much because it really resonates. And then I think the fact that they have such a big following now, and even My Favorite Murder, it's all of these what are thought to be odd interests or hobbies or things that fascinate you. It's but why is that weird? It's just one other thing. You could argue it's weird to be interested in math. That's just boring.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I don't know. I love that. And I think too, I know we've talked a little bit about future career plans like for you. And I think there's, something in the health space that is kind of like pulling back the veil a little bit, like working in that space, whether it's working with people who are sick or, studying illness, or if it's like bringing new life into the world, like that is a part of that cycle, that we're all a part of. And it's inevitable. Like end of life is inevitable. Right. We just don't know what's on the other side. And like being a part of the entry into this life is a whole nother thing. Yeah. But I love that. I love that that's how you're interpreting it. Because I think, I was going to say, you're one number short. It's not the sign of the beast.
Exactly. I know. Thankfully. Maybe it'd be a different
story. If one of us is a demon, it's me. Like, let's be very clear. I'm the demon.
Oh, no.
In this relationship.
No. There's no way you're a demon. No way.
You never know.
I mean, I guess maybe you're the Hat Man.
No. Oh my gosh. No. Oh, that was too far. Too far.
Okay, sorry. But if you're him, then it doesn't bother you.
Yeah, that's true. No. Yeah. Yeah, weirdly, I mean, I feel like I feel pretty confident that we have a lot of control over what we allow, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just because I've had weird experiences and have felt like on the edge. Like I've felt that moment of like, if I push past this precipice, I'm afraid of what might happen.
Yeah.
But I can like tap into something that gets me regrounded. And I can be like, that was not something for me to dwell on. So I'm going to move forward. And it makes scary experiences like that with what could be potentially otherworldly a little more manageable.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was also thinking when this number started appearing, I know we talked a little bit before about my health issues, but I'll just share that I have a seizure disorder. And I'm like terrified when they happen. And I've always thought, I wonder if there's a way that I can turn myself or change that attitude from fear to using it as if I were like a shaman, which sounds so silly, but I'm sure
it doesn't at all.
There's got to be a reason why
100%
epilepsy were thought to be shamans or, seers of whatever kind.
Yeah.
So, but I just don't know how to go about changing that attitude, but maybe that's what message I'm receiving. So,
yeah. I don't think that's weird, or, I mean, that's like where my mind always goes. Like the fact that you and I have had an abnormal, and I mean that in a positive way, an abnormal connection to one another and like the world around you. Like, I think there's something to that. And it's, why wouldn't it be that, that, you're able to maybe access a part of your brain that connects you to something that the rest of us either don't have access to or can't see or are resistant to because our guard is up when, we're not seizing. But I wonder if there's like some veil. No, seriously though, like some veil that's like lowered during that time. But I can also understand how that would be terrifying. And from a purely like health standpoint, taking out the paranormal component, it's like, I mean, it's scary.
It's scary.
And what you've been told is that it's nothing but scary.
Right. Yeah, that it's dangerous.
But it's a part of you. Yeah.
Yeah. But maybe one day I'll learn.
Yeah.
Because
we should talk about that. We should talk about that more. I think that's interesting. And I wonder too if like, do you know anybody else who has seizures?
No. I don't.
Because I wonder if it's a matter of like finding a community of people who have a similar experience and like get some opinions, like how do you cope with that? How do you feel in the midst of it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like a energetic or spiritual connection outside of that? Like,
Yeah.
all of that. I wonder if you share those experiences and a lot of other people just feel like you feel, or it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I'm not going to tell people about this because people are just going to think it's weird.
Yeah, it's very possible. I know. I'll look into it because it would be definitely nice to turn that around in my life. But
for sure.
It's strange because I don't have seizures in the traditional sense anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But from descriptions that I've heard from people who have taken psychedelics, the experience on a psychedelic drug sounds like how I feel when I'm having a seizure episode.
Interesting.
And I know psychedelics, help you transcend from your body. So it's as if I can muster that feeling or create that without anything. But I think that's what makes it scary.
That's interesting.
Because it happens without my consent. Like I'm not taking a drug to have that
You're
experience.
Not in control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's really interesting.
Yeah, I would definitely say it feels, for me, I've never done psychedelics for good reason. I think because I don't want to.
No, psychoactive drugs might not be the best.
Yeah, let's not double my experience. Yeah. But it's definitely out of body. But I think I have to force myself to feel grounded. It feels as if I lose control. I'm going to I don't even know, disappear from the world, basically.
Yeah.
So maybe that's just the need to let go and see what happens. I'll keep you posted next time.
Jeez, yeah. Okay, just please do it while Dave's there or someone's there.
Yeah.
I don't want you floating into another dimension.
Well, maybe I'll find out where the shadow people are.
Oh God. Okay, if you're the collateral damage, I don't want to know.
Okay, thank you.
Just for the record. Also, quick plug for Timothy M. Brown Jr., who supplied me with so much of tonight's content. The Hat Man, his identity revealed. You can go to thehatmanproject.com. It's a free book. Oh. What a prince.
Yeah.
You literally just click on the link. Like if you scroll down on the main homepage, there's a link that says learn more. And he says, if you're interested in receiving a copy as soon as it's released, click the button to the right. You'll be added to our mailing list and we'll be sent a copy of the book as soon as it is complete. Mm. So he's the real MVP in the paranormal world. Definitely clicking learn more because I want to be on that mailing list. Yes. And I'll send you the link too, Amy.
Okay, that'd be great.
Wow, what a ride.
I know.
Tonight was just a roller coaster. But yeah, thank you for anyone and everyone who's listening. Please rate, review, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Follow us on Instagram at Girls Gone Spooky. And if you have spooky stories you'd like to share, please email them to us at girlsgonespooky@gmail.com.
Please.
Stay spooky.
Stay spooky.
If you see a demon, say no thank you.
Yep.
No thank
Simple
you.
as that. No thank you. But thanks everyone for listening.
No thank you.